Hello and welcome back to the cockpit of the A-18 Hornet. This will be lesson number 5 in the Hornet training campaign / flight school, whatever you want to call it, that I'm trying to put together for the aircraft. This one will focus on radio navigation. We're going to learn how to fly to a VOR station, fly over that VOR station, and then fly to a TACAN, set a radial, and land. So an overview for those of you who haven't seen any other videos yet, I'm trying to put together a full training course that will take you from 0 to competent pilot by the time you get to the end of it. And at this point, I've kind of decided on 4 blocks of training. Each one will have a test at the end that you have to pass before you can access the next block. This shows that you have mastered the skills that have been taught in the previous section, and you're ready to move on to more complex things. So first block is going to be basic navigation, followed by a capstone for that. Then there'll be air to ground, followed by a test for that, and then air to air, followed by a test for that, and then block 4 will be all about carrier operations. So this is lesson 5 of the first navigation block that I'm trying to put together. This will be the last lesson. Then there will be a review that I've already kind of completed. I just need to kind of do some quality control for it. And I also have the test done, sort of, but there's a lot of quality control I need to do for that. But this one is pretty much finished, I think. Hopefully I won't notice anything during this video that's messed up. But we're going to run through this so you guys can see what it's going to look like. And I would appreciate any feedback from people who know what they're doing more than I do, because I'm putting this together based on the little bit of experience that I have. So let's go ahead and get into it.
Welcome back. You can feel free to go through the startup sequence while I go through the spiel for this mission. You'll need the flashlight to see the switches, so activate it using the appropriate key bind, left Alt L. Flying from waypoint to waypoint is generally the best way to get from one place to another, but it isn't the only way, and there are certain situations where understanding and being able to use radio navigation can make things easier, and in some situations be critical to mission success. For this flight, we're going to learn about the 2 forms of radio navigation equipped on the Hornet, TACAN and ADF. The Automatic Direction Finder, or ADF, is a radio detector that displays the direction from the aircraft to a radio source, and that's it. There is no additional information, so it has a very limited use case. Our first destination will be crossing a VOR station, which the Hornet will pick up in this mode. The other form is the TACAN, or Tactical Air Navigation, which also provides direction to the station, but also gives you the distance in nautical miles to that station. This is far more useful, as it allows us to get fairly precise position location based on our bearing from the station and the provided distance. This flight will be flown solely with the aid of radio navigation to get you used to using those instruments. Once the aircraft is started up, we'll get the radio aid set up.
Okay, so the highlights that you're seeing here, these are aids to help you get through the startup process. You will have them all the way through the first block of training. Then for the test at the end of this, all the aids go away. So you have to start it up on your own, you have to shut it down on your own, you have to do all that stuff on your own, you have to operate everything on your own. So at this point, we're waiting for the INS to finish aligning. For the video here, I am going to, there's nothing to stop you from time compressing through things as well once these are available. I still have not decided how I'm going to release these. I still have not decided how I'm going to release these. Likely, this is taking a lot of work, so I'm
now that we're all
relatively
sure
this is not going to be free, but we'll see.
Be sure you've set your cockpit lighting appropriately for night conditions, especially the console and instrument panels, as they'll be impossible to see in the dark. The HUD is also extremely bright at full power at night, so adjust it with the brightness knob until it's comfortable to look at. Our first destination will be a VOR station, which we'll fly over to demonstrate approaching and crossing a radio source and what that looks like on the HSI. The first thing we need to do is get the frequency for the station entered into the radio. Find the COM1 knob on the left side of the UFC just under the numbered keys and rotate it using the mouse wheel until the display reads M for manual. Enter 113.600 to enter the frequency into the radio. You'll know you have the correct frequency because a Morse code signal will begin coming in over the radio. This is the signal assigned to the viewer station we'll be flying over, so as long as you hear it, you know you're good. Find the ADF switch just to the left of the number keys on the UFC and switch it to COM1 with a right mouse click. This will send the information to the HSI so the station appears on the display once we're within range. It likely already appears on the HSI as an empty circle outside the heading wheel at about 270. Keep that in mind because we'll be looking for that again once we're in the air. Tap IP to continue.
So I figured out how to interact with cockpit items, which is why I'm able to highlight things, and I figured out a way to use this little IP ident button to advance the steps.
Okay, now that we have our first destination sorted, let's get the TACAN set up. After we fly over the viewer station using the ADF, we're going to head over to Batumi to practice the instrument approach to an airfield. I'll give you detailed instructions after we pass over the viewer station, but go ahead and enter the TACAN code for Batumi, 16X, and don't forget to turn the TACAN on. Press IP to continue.
You saw me do that as part of the startup process because I knew what station we were using.
We're all set for the flight. Go ahead and taxi to the runway while I go over how to get to the viewer station. Don't forget to turn on your landing/taxi lights using the switch just down and to the left of the flap switch. To get within range of our first destination, you'll turn to a heading of 270 after takeoff and continue until the HSI picks up the station. You'll know this has happened when an empty circle appears outside the heading wheel. Once that happens, turn toward the signal until the circle is at the top of the HSI and follow it until told otherwise. One thing to remember, though, is that radio signals work on line of sight, so if something big is in the way, like a mountain, you may lose the signal until the obstruction is out of the way. Don't panic. Just keep on flying until the signal comes back. This will be a relatively long flight, so feel free to make extensive use of the autopilot to reduce your workload and focus on the instruments. The heading, HSEL, and altitude, BALT, functions are the options you should be using, as there are no waypoints for this flight. You can adjust the selected heading with the HDG switch just below the UFC. You can hold the switch left or right until it's on the proper heading, or you can also hold it down for a couple of seconds and the UFC menu will show an HSEL option, at which point you can just type the heading you want with the number pads and press enter. Go ahead and get yourself in the air, turn to a heading of 270 and climb to an altitude of 10,000 feet. You're free to choose your own airspeed, but keep an eye on your fuel consumption. If you're using afterburner the whole flight, you might not have enough fuel to get back. I'll provide further instructions as you approach the viewer station. Be patient and watch the HSI and everything will be fine.
Okay, so the basic idea is the VR station will show up here, you fly, you continue flying in that direction, and then at some point the mountain's going to get in your way. That's why I put the extra little stuff in there about the line of sight. The VOR station will disappear for a little bit because mountains and stuff will get in the way. And then it'll come back, you fly over it, and then new instructions will come up, assuming you go inside that trigger zone. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the heading indicator in that direction. And then we're going to we're at the correct altitude, so let me push us back down. There we go. And then I'm just going to watch the map so I can know when to take us out of time compression, because I'm not going to make you guys watch like 10 minutes of freaking flying over here. So we fly over here. There's a VOR station that we're going to fly over here, and then I'll line us up for a landing over here at Batumi. That's learning the TACAN and course radial and all that stuff. That's what we're going to learn. So that's the point of this lesson. So I'm just waiting to get close to Kataisi. We'll go back to regular time compression, and then... Okay, let me double check, because it doesn't look like... Yeah, we're not quite on the right heading. I gotta wait till we level out, because for whatever reason, when you turn, the bearing to the radio station changes, so you gotta be kind of careful about that. But ideally, we'll get within a certain range, and then we'll get messages telling us what
Made it to Kutaisi,
so here you go.
Good job. As you fly over the station, you'll see the circle suddenly swing around behind you, and you'll know that you've crossed overhead. Once that happens, you can turn off the ADF with the switch next to the UFC number keys, then go ahead and enter the frequency for the tower at Batumi so we don't have to listen to the Morse code identifier signal anymore.
You're told in a previous thing that all of the information that you need will be included in your mission briefing. I may go in and include a kneeboard copy of all of this stuff too. I haven't decided yet. You have to get into the mission file to do that, and it's not difficult to do, but I have to get around to it.
Once that's done, turn to a heading of 270.
Okay, we've crossed over, so
remember my comment
270.
earlier today about straight-in landings? Well, there are a few exceptions. While nearly all our landings in this course will be a practice of the Case 1 recovery procedure on an aircraft carrier, night landings will be for practicing the Case 3 recovery, which involves a straight-in landing to the carrier. Case 3 is used at night and during inclement weather because the visual cues necessary for the Case 1 procedures are difficult or impossible to see. Since you need to know how to perform a Case 3 recovery, we're going to do an approximation of that every time we land at night. Press IP to continue. Once you have the TACAN selected in the HSI, you can place a visual indicator over the TACAN station to help you line up with it using the CRS switch to the right side of the UFC just under the menu buttons. It works just like the HDG switch. Hold it down for a couple of seconds, then enter the runway heading with the number pads and press enter. In this case, we want to enter the runway heading for Batumi, which should be 126, but unfortunately it's not quite that simple. Press IP to continue. For various reasons, many times the course headings provided on the map don't always match with the course headings you need to see in the aircraft to get where you're going. This is because of something called standard deviation. It has to do with the movement of the magnetic pole, but to keep it simple, just understand that different parts of the world require a different adjustment to map headings so that your instruments work correctly. This is the standard deviation. For the Caucasus, the standard deviation is -6 degrees, so you're going to need to do that math in your head anytime you're given a heading from a map to get the proper information entered into your aircraft. Press IP to continue. All that said, the runway heading listed on the map for Batumi is 126 degrees, so we're going to need to subtract 6 degrees from that for a final heading of 120. Go ahead and hold the CRS switch down until the UFC menu option appears, then type in 120 and press enter. You should see an arrow over the TACAN station on your HSI pointing in the direction of 120. Press IP to continue. If you look at the HSI, you can see that the TACAN station at the airfield is off to our left. We need to circle around a bit to get lined up. Continue on this heading until the airfield is about 50 miles away, then press the IP button for further instructions.
Okay, so I have you set to fly a little further along so that you can get kind of past and give us room to turn around and get lined up for the approach. So we're going to time compress through this. And once we get out to 50 miles, we'll make our left turn. Or once we get out to 50 miles, you press, and then we're going to be told to turn to the left. So we'll let it get out to 50 miles. It gets you a little close to the course line than you really want to be, but you know, I didn't want to be too complicated with it. Just fly in this thing. Once you're far enough away, we'll turn towards the line and then go. So here we go.
Disable the autopilot and turn left until the course line we created is perpendicular from right to left on the HSI. As you make your way toward the course line, descend and maintain 3,000 feet and reduce your airspeed to about 350 knots. Switch the altimeter to radar so we make sure we don't hit anything. This will be important later when you land at Vatsiani. If you look up at the HUD, you'll see the course line is also depicted there along with 2 dots. These dots provide you left and right distance from the course line. As you get close to the course line, the arrow on the HUD will start moving toward your velocity vector. Once it starts moving, make an aggressive 45-degree turn to the left. Keep turning until...
So before you say anything about that, yes, I realize you generally want to approach the line at about 45 degrees, but for me to have set that up, I would have had to have extended the flight quite a bit because there's only a couple of VOR stations on the map, and I would have had to either take them to another airfield quite a bit further away or just take them way far out to make them turn around. So I decided to make it simple, cross over the VAR station, fly out far enough that we can turn around and still get down to 3,000 feet and start a descent at 10 miles. So that's the reasoning behind that. I know some people are going to disagree with it, but I feel like it's a good enough thing to keep the flight as brief as possible because this one's already really long.
So your heading is at about a 45-degree angle from the course line. Once the course line passes the inside, make gradual adjustments to the left to place yourself exactly on the course line.
There, I didn't see that.
You'll know you've got it right when the arrow is pointing straight up and is perfectly centered on the velocity vector.
Okay, so like I said, you know, typically you want to approach the airfield or whatever it is that you're doing far enough out that you can get a nice 45-degree angle approach to it. That's generally what you want to do, but for this case, it's just I had to kind of make some concessions to keep the flight as short as possible. I wasn't going to have them try to navigate to things that were like right next to Vaziani, and that, you know, there's just not, that would not have been any kind of help to them. I wanted it to be things that were far enough away that they had to use radio navigation to get to it. So the compromise for that was, I mean, if they had more VOR stations on the map, then I would have been able to have more options, but otherwise, this was like the only way to make it work and still have a reasonable flight length. Not something that was like ridiculously long. So sorry for those of you who don't like that I'm not using the preferred approach, but this is good enough. It's good enough to get new people to understand the idea of getting on a radial and then turning to that radial and then lining up with the airfield. And then once they master this, they'll understand, you know, getting on the BRC for the carrier landing later on and using the TACAN to do that. So we're teaching concepts here, not necessarily perfect procedures. So I'm going to time compress a little bit so that, yeah, there we go. So now the course line's starting to come in. You're supposed to turn until it's at about 45 degrees. And then once it passes that, so once we get it to about 45 degrees, it's about 45 degrees. Now we can shallow, we'll hold it here at 45 degrees until we get to the inside line, the inside dot. And then we'll start making a shallow turn to join the course line. And I wanted to put us out far enough so that people had plenty of time to get lined up and ready before you got within the range where more instructions start getting thrown at you. So that's another reason why we went out so far. You don't have to go out this far to get on the radio, clearly, but I wanted to make sure that new people who don't know what they're doing, and especially it's their first time doing it, that they had plenty of time to turn, get lined up, and if they overshoot or undershoot or whatever they end up doing, they have plenty of time to fix it before they get close to the airfield and start having to do other stuff. So that's the rationale. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to get us established on this, and then we'll time compress again to get to the part where further instructions come up. So we're pretty much on the line at this point. So let me get on the heading. Sorry, I'm jerking around a little bit too much, but it is what it is. Okay, we're gonna get the autopilot radar ultimate. Are we not on the radar? Confused. Alright, well, whatever. We'll change the heading to 120 and do that. And then heading select. And of course, I drifted off course as I did that, but that's alright. We're just trying to get close enough to get the instructions. This is more to just demonstrate. This is more to demonstrate what you're going to get in the lesson than it is to try to get this perfect. Partly because I'm trying to be in a hurry because I know this is a YouTube video and a lot of people aren't going to have the patience to just sit and wait for a lesson, you know? So hopefully you're getting the idea of what this is supposed to be and not using my performance of getting through it as a judge of what the lesson is. The lesson works, I'm just...
Way lighting on. It'll be pretty hard to see the runway without them. You should already have the tower frequency in the radio, so use your COM1 key bind to bring up the communications menu. Select ATC, Batumi, inbound to let them know you're coming. They should light up the runway for you.
1-1, inbound.
1-1. Roger me. Fly heading 130. 45. QFE 29.89. Runway 13. To pattern altitude.
Okay, so the point of that was to get them to turn the runway lights on, which is explained in the thing here. I just fast-forwarded a little bit too fast. I leave the text up here for a very long time so that as you're going through the lesson, it's right there and you can just read it again if you missed something. So here in a second, we're going to have some more... Here we go.
Okay, we're about 10 miles from the runway. Go ahead and begin a 600 to 900 foot per minute descent toward the runway. As you do so, slow to less than 250 knots and then configure the aircraft for landing, being sure to control your descent rate. Unfortunately, the Hornet doesn't have an ILS system that works with airfields, so we have to do a bit of math as we approach the runway. It's pretty easy really, just multiply your distance in miles by 3 and add 2 zeros. So at 5 miles you should be at about 1,500 feet, and at 2 miles you should be at about 600. Do your best to stay on the TACAN localizer and control your descent rate with the throttle. Once the runway is in sight, it's all visual from there. As you approach the airfield, you'll be handed off to the tower, so simply select the Request Landing option to finish up with the radio. Once you can see the runway, you can switch to a completely visual approach and ignore the TACAN information. Once you touch down, add full power and get back into the air, then turn to a heading of 076 for further instructions.
Okay, and then, you know, well, let me get this all lined up, and then I'll time compress through the last part of this, hopefully. So ideally, I'm gonna try to speed this part up because it's kind of boring to watch, but it's not going to be a perfect landing. I'm trying to fast forward through the lesson so you can see what the lesson is and how it works, not necessarily that I can do a good job at it, because obviously if I'm not fast forwarding through it, I can do a pretty decent job at actually doing the lesson. But so you get these instructions. It tells you what to do to how to get down, and I'm going to need to actually slow down now. It tells you how to get down, and then you touch down, you get further instructions, and then you go do what it tells you to do.
And that's how it's done. Go ahead and add full throttle, get back in the air, and turn to 076.
Okay, so we get all that done. Get the 076 in. You get your heading in there. Flaps and gear come up, and then I have a big trigger zone set up so that as long as you're flying in the general direction of 076, you're going to get further instructions. I don't remember how far away from the airfield. It's relatively close. Here we go.
We're ready to head back to Vatsiani now, and this time it's all up to you to get yourself on the ground. Go ahead and enter the TACAN frequency for the airfield, and once you're close enough you can set the CRS switch to the correct heading. The heading listed on the map is 135. But remember, you need to correct for that with the standard deviation value for the Caucasus. As you approach the airfield, give yourself enough room to get lined up with the course line at 3,000 feet so you can begin your descent at about 10 miles. Don't forget to set your altimeter to radar mode. Forgetting to do so will likely result in a crash. Here are a few hints to increase your chances.
I've seen comments in other videos where people recommend using the barometric altitude, and the problem with that is that if you're using barometric altitude and you're trying to fly at 3,000 feet, if the ground level is above 3,000 feet, you're going to crash into the ground. So it's better to just be in the habit of using radar altitude, and if there's a bunch of changes, you just pay attention to that. Some people may disagree. I think it's safer to just have the accurate ground altitude because that's just the way you're supposed to do it. If you had ILS, you would have a radio frequency bringing you in. You don't have that with the Hornet, so you need to have some kind of warning that says, hey, there's a big hill coming up and you're about to hit it.
Ensure your TACAN frequency is set and that you have it selected on the HSI. Remember the standard deviation rule when setting your runway course. Ensure that your radar altimeter is set so you don't hit the ground. Be aware that there are mountains in the area around Vaziani, and it's too dark to see them, so keep a close eye on that radar altimeter. As you approach the airfield, be sure to contact them on the tower frequency so they turn on the runway lights. Give yourself enough room to get on the course line and be settled at about 3,000 feet before you hit 10 miles.
Gotta fix this.
Until you're more experienced, 30 miles is a good distance to use while approaching the course line. Remember the multiply by 3 rule as you approach the runway.
Before I consider the package finished, I will have gone through and done proofreading and make sure that the little things like this are fixed.
Switch to visual once you can clearly see the runway. Night landings are straight in, so just take her on home and park it in Space 1. Good luck, and see you on the ground.
Okay, so again, once we get past a certain point, we're going to lose line of sight with the TACAN, which is going to make you freak out a little bit. And if you have a little bit of patience, it'll come back, and then you just have to. For whatever reason, when it comes back, it doesn't bring back all of your information. I end up having to set my course line again. So say we've lost a distance. So, once we get past all the mountains and stuff that are in the way, it'll come back, and then you can reset everything and start getting yourself lined up for a landing. Okay, so now we have that back. I'm going to reset it to 129 because that's the standard deviation corrected thing. We're going to make a turn to the left. I actually have to turn off my heading select option. And then you just do the same thing you did last time. This time it's all on your own though. Like, you got the instruction the first time, you literally just did it, so you should be able to kind of figure it out. And if you can't remember, all you have to do is just go back to the messages brief, and it will the message history, and you can read back and see anything that you should have done along the way. All of the lessons you're able to do that. So there's no reason you need to be handheld, babysat, whatever terminology you want to use when you're talking about doing this kind of stuff. So we'll time compress through this part again, try to get down to where we're ready to start making our right turn in, and then we'll come in for the landing. I did 10,000 feet. I'm not going to say that I'm like super smart and I did it on purpose. I did 10,000 feet because it seemed like it should be high enough. But for this mission specifically, 10,000 feet was really good because it does break your line of sight with several of the radio sources because of the mountains out here. So it gives good practice to the pilots to get the idea of, oh yeah, I may lose my source, but I just need to be patient and it'll come back. So that's why I didn't change it when I realized in the next mission that 10,000 feet going along this kind of route is like right on top of the mountains. But as long as they stay at 10,000 feet, they should be fine. Okay, we're going to time compress a little bit to try to get, there we go. So we do that. 45 degree-ish turn should be enough to get us turned before we hit the actual course line. My first version was teaching about the scale button here, but I didn't want to get overly complicated. I just wanted you to do the turn and pay attention to this, because this is kind of the most important part. Once you're on this, you're good. We gotta get on the 120. Okay. Or I'm sorry, it's 129, not 120. I had the other airfield in my head. So we'll go over to 140 to bring ourselves over. That'll get us relatively close to the line. And then, as we start getting closer to, I guess we can start descending now. We got 9,000 feet of radar altitude below us, or at least 5,000 anyway. Okay, we should be relatively close to 129. So let's go ahead and get lined up with that. So the only thing that's really left for this mission is you get a notification towards the end. I need to start slowing down. You get a notification as you get relatively close to, oh yeah, we gotta contact Vaziani. So let's get the Vaziani station in. Gonna contact Vaziani inbound, so they turn the runway lights on.
1-1. Vaziani, fly heading 136.
Altitude. Altitude.
8.34. Runway 13 to TACAN altitude.
So we're a little to the right of the course line. I think it starts showing up right around 10 or 11 miles, something like that. So let's, yeah, there it is. Okay. I don't remember if I have any, I don't think I have any more triggers. You come in and you land. Let me get my speed brake out.
1-1. Cleared for visual. Cut.
1-1. Request landing.
I don't know if we're gonna be able to slow down before,
Clear to land. Runway 13.
because I know I'm making mistakes because I'm trying to speed my way through this. To some people, that's not going to be an excuse, but this is more of a demonstration of the lesson, not my competency in flying. I'm a fairly decent pilot when I'm not trying to time compress through everything. Okay, we are now close enough to 250 that we can start putting the landing gear down. Ugh. Just waiting on those flaps to come down. Waiting on those flaps to come down. Come on, down you go, down you go, down you go. Probably help if I didn't come screaming in at frickin' 300 and some odd, 400 some odd knots, but okay. This sort of, oh, too far. Okay, I think we got it. Okay, we come in for the landing.
Good trap.
All right.
Exit the runway and taxi to parking spot 1.
As long as you land near the numbers, you're going to get a good trap notification every time. And that's going to remain for the rest of the course. Even past the navigation section, you are going to get graded on your landing, depending on whether you are able to, get close enough to the numbers for it to kind of be reasonable that you would have hit the wires on the carrier. Because everything in this course is ultimately leading up to you.
Head back to parking spot 1 and shut down the aircraft.
Yeah. I'm too impatient to go all the way around. And this video is already 32 minutes because it's such a long flight. But anyways, everything in this course is geared towards, making you competent in the Hornet, but also being able to go out there and land at the aircraft carrier and do operations out there. And the way you get to the point where you can do that is to practice carrier landings a lot. So we're going to practice them here on the ground, and then at the end, once you know how to bomb things and shoot things out of the air, we're going to go teach you how to do carrier ops. So that's the idea. This is the last lesson before a review that is basically going to just do everything that you did in the first 5 lessons, and then there'll be a check ride. And I'm mostly done with the check ride part. I'm mostly done with the review part because they're basically the same mission, just with certain text and stuff taken out and certain triggers taken out, and there's a grading system in the check ride, the actual check ride part. Oh, crap. Where's spot 1? So you have to stop in spot 1. I think I overshot it. We're still within the trigger? Okay. So you stop in spot 1, you go through the shutdown. Let's get the flashlight turned on. You go through the shutdown process. O-Bogs is off. Turn all the switches off. And again, the triggers work if you use an auto start and shutdown sequence. It accounts for that. Basically, pulling the parking brake out on your start and turning the battery switch off on your stop, on your shutdown, will trigger the end of the mission. These are both off. Are we not off? Okay, there we go. We got to turn off the left engine, turn off the right engine. They're all off. Battery switch.
Excellent
off.
work.
All right, there we go.
Get some rest because training continues tomorrow morning.
And that's it. So hopefully you guys understand the value of that mission. A lot of people in just general aviation struggle with radio navigation at first. I've had a lot of experience in it because I've been doing flight sims my whole life. But, most people don't understand, I can use this radio to get where I'm going. So that's the idea. Anyways, this video has already been super long, so we're going to go ahead and end it here. Please, 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 if you have a lot of experience flying the Hornet or just DCS in general, I would appreciate any feedback that you think might help new pilots. Because especially once I start getting into the bombing part and the air-to-air part, I suck at that. I really don't know what I'm doing. I know the theory behind it, and hopefully I can design missions behind it, but I'm not experienced. So the more people we can get involved with feedback, at least, would be appreciated. Be sure to click the like button so the YouTube algorithm knows you enjoyed it and pushes the video out to more people. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and do that now so you know when the next video comes out. Go back and review all of the other videos that I've done for this so far. And I do have a Patreon if you'd like to help support me. This does take quite a lot of time. Each mission takes a day or two of full-time work to do it. So yeah, it's a lot of work. And it's kind of fun, but support would be appreciated. Again, thank you very much for your time, and I will see you for the next one.